Get ready for the fantastic finale to the conference. So anybody who is sleepy, Mr. Kant will wake them up. All right, so I think, the biography is all there, and what I intend to do is to bring up the introduction in my conversation, but just one factoid I should mention, that as I was completing my first year at the Niti Aayog, the term of the then CEO was ending. She had been actually appointed post-retirement, I think, for a year. And so about around November or so December, end of December that was ending, and about November or so, I went to the Prime Minister, said that, we need a new CEO. And he said, give me the suggestions. So he said, think about it and let me have your suggestions. So I did a lot of, one name I had on my list, but I needed two more to make it actually a list and a short list of suggestions. Did that. And then I sort of mentioned the two names, but then I went in to say that, look, if you really want to give us somebody dynamic, give us Mr. Amitabh Kant. I didn't expect, actually, that this would happen. Frankly, I thought I'll end up with one of the other two. But lo and behold, the Prime Minister actually made good on my request. And we had a fantastic 2 years together working at the Niti Aayog. And when, I don't know what your assessment is, which we will talk about also, but mine is that I think during those 2 years, we really got an awful lot done. A lot of it didn't come to fruition then, but tons of things that actually happened subsequently had been initiated, at least, during those 2 years, including even the towards the tail end of my tenure, the aspirational districts program. So I feel really good, and that is in no small measure, of course, due to the dynamism of Mr. Kant, but I'd like to think that it is also due to the good chemistry that we two had. There were occasions when we disagreed, and I particularly remember that one time, I completely disagreed with Mr. Kant, and I changed the noting on the file and everything. When the file was going to go, he came and said that we'll send it as per your note, but I don't think you are right on this one. And so I gave me a pause. I said, okay, please sit down. Explain to me why I am wrong. And he did. He convinced me I was wrong, and we changed the noting on the file. So that is the kind of, good communication that existed between the two of us. So with that, let me kind of begin. So Mr. Amitabh Kant really had his education like most other officers in this top civil service. He went to the St. Stephen's College, did economics honors. But you then didn't actually continue with economics. You went to do international relations at the Jawaharlal Nehru University.
So, one of my professors who was teaching me in St. Stephen's College, he sat for the Indian Administrative Service, and he was the most brilliant man. He corrected Samuelson's book on economics. He got 15 marks. He'd been a topper all through his life. First year he sat, he got 15 marks in microeconomics, and he got about 18 marks in macro, and second year he sat, he got 20 and 22 marks. Third year he sat with statistics and maths, And he almost topped the All India service. He later got into the foreign service. So one thing which was very clear was that if you go to D school, you'll never get into the IAS. I decided to just move on. And the first year I sat, I got in. So
you're sure this wasn't the influence of your mother who did political science and actually taught both here and in India?
Well, my mother was an academician, so she was a professor in Banaras in the university, and then she was the principal of Maitri College in Delhi for a long time, and she was a Fulbright scholar. She taught here in the University of Virginia here for a long time. And so there was a lot of influence of her on me all through. But I just wanted to say that, it was such a pleasure and a delight working with Mr. Panagariya for 2 years, and when he was leaving, I literally begged him to stay on because he was such a big thinker, and not merely a big thinker, but who had his fundamentals so right in terms of...
We are here to talk about you.
Yeah, so it was a really delight to be able to do many things when he was the vice chairman of Niti Aayog.
Thank you. So now you have a brother. For those of you who do not know, Mr. Amitabh Kant's brother is Ravi Kant. And for those of you who do not know who Ravi Kant is, he was the chief of the Tata Motors for several decades. And he, among many other things, he also actually had conceptualized after Mr. Ratan Tata had made the promise to do a Lakhtakia car, the concept of nano. But he also ran Jaguar and whatnot, so very, very big contribution. So in a way, we like to think that your parents should have had a few more children.
Well, I have a sister who runs her own NGO in Mumbai, and 3 of us.
Diversified.
Yeah.
Diversified. Okay. All right. So going to the JNU and doing international relations paid off. So you then did actually join the IAS, and you started off as your career in Thalassery as first a sub-collector, and then you came to Kozhikode, at the time Calicut. And somebody has said that when you came to when you became the collector of Calicut or Kozhikode, apparently the town looked very much like the way it did when Vasco da Gama came there, and you really then transformed it. Maybe.
The story was that actually Calicut had very small lanes, and it had a lot of encroachments. And they said that if Vasco da Gama was to come back, he'll find Calicut exactly the manner in which he left it, till Amitabh Kant came and completely changed it. So I created a bypass. I changed about 44 odd roads, widened them. I faced about almost 22 contempt of court cases in the Kerala High Court. And actually, I cleaned up the heart of the town, and I created the Mananchara Maidan. But a lot of my future career owes to much of what I did, because I suffered subsequently. I demolished many major buildings of encroachment, and one of the 4-star hotels that I demolished was of a gentleman who later became the Deputy Chief Minister of Kerala. And, I was kept without a posting for about almost 9 months. The government came to power without posting for 9 months. And then, the Chief Minister finally said, I'll post you, and as a punishment posting. At that point of time, nobody had heard of Kerala as a tourism destination. People used to go to Rajasthan, or people used to go to Jammu and Kashmir. So he posted me as a punishment posting. He posted me as Secretary Tourism. And I really took this opportunity to build Kerala. I got a tenure as a punishment posting, and I built it up as a tourism destination. I created the backwaters. I created the houseboats. I I moved away from just a beach product into going back to the roots of Kerala. I brought in Ayurveda, the martial arts of Kerala, the Kerala cuisine, the Kerala art forms. And I differentiated Kerala as a tourism product from anything else in the world. So actually, Calicut really, by ensuring that I get punished, enabled me to build Kerala as a great travel and tourism destination.
I see. So this is where the God's own country and the Atithi Devo Bhava.
Yeah, so it was a, it used to be a very low value destination. It had just one product, which was the Kovalam beach. And all the garbage collectors and all the cobblers of Manchester used to come down in chartered flight to Kovalam, and that had led to, spending just about 20 pounds a night, 15 to 20 pounds a night. It had led to encroachments in Kovalam beach. So actually, when I took over, I went to Kovalam beach and I saw it was in a pathetic shape. Huge encroachments, garbage, dust, filth, all kind of things. So I closed Kovalam beach for about a year and a half, and then by that time we had created backwaters and we had created several other new products of Kerala tourism, which really took off in the coming years. And we branded Kerala as God's own country simply because we wanted to take it up the value chain. We said Kerala must be a destination. It's such a unique product. It should be a $500 destination. We worked with the private sector, and they created some of the unique resorts, boutique resorts of Kerala, which really was a great experience of working with the private sector. So it was in many ways private-public partnership.
So a little before that, though, while I think this was in Kazikode, that around 1992, when the Babri Masjid demolition happened, I think I've got that right, roughly?
Yeah.
And so there were communal tensions that arose there, and you really organized this incredible, painting festival.
Yeah. You seem to have done more research on me than on economics. So Calicut, it was a phenomenal place. Actually, the population was 70% Hindus. 40% Hindu, 40% Muslims, 20%, about 18 to 20% Christians. And then the Babri Masjid incident happened, and it was really tense. I was the district collector at that point of time. It was really tense. So, one fine day, I thought I'll get, the heart of the town was a place called Mananchara Maidan, and I thought I'll get all the top artists to paint on communal harmony. So I got all the top Kerala artists, and I did this 100-meter long stretch of fabric, canvas on which everybody was painting, and then, it was to be done on a Sunday morning, and Friday quite I just picked up the phone. Somebody told me, why don't you invite M.F. Hussain? So I phoned him up. In Mumbai, I didn't know him from Adams. I just phoned him up and I said, कि Hussain साहब ये कर रहे हैं, अगर आप आकर उसका centerpiece कर दीजिए. He said, नहीं ये तो बहुत अच्छा idea, मैं ज़रूर आऊँगा. तो then somebody told me कि ये Hussain तो सबको promise करते हैं, आते नहीं हैं. So what I did was I bought the ticket and I asked somebody from Kerala, from Calicut, who was living in Mumbai, to go to his house, give it to him and to his, send 2 tickets for him and his daughter. And actually, they came down and I received them at the airport, and they stayed at my house. I was collector. And they stayed at my house for 3-4 days. So, and he did the centerpiece, and magnificent centerpiece he did. And then he said, I'm seeing so many images that I can do this whole 100-meter canvas. And that, blossomed into a great relationship with Hussain, and he came to Kerala 3 or 4 times while I was collector, and when I became Secretary Tourism, I got him to paint on Kerala. And that was the book which later we converted it into a book for which Shashi Tharoor interpreted his paintings. So it was a great partnership which we built, and so wonderful relationship I had with him.
Yeah, there is, if you check the internet, which I did actually, there is a wonderful picture of, a very young Amitabh Kant, with this button open and with his hand on M.F. Hussain and real camaraderie there. And then, of course, he also painted something for you, for your daughter or something.
Yeah.
I
So,
remember
he used to come to my, he was staying at my house. So I had a daughter and my wife was expecting the second kid. And then when he was leaving, he said, he told my wife to get a canvas. So she didn't have a canvas. She had a chart paper of my younger daughter. So she brought that chart paper. And on that, Hussein painted 3 Ganeshas. That was me, my wife, and the younger daughter. And then he painted a bird flying away, which was the child yet to be born. It's a fascinating painting.
I remember we talked about that painting at your home. Okay, so then you, of course, got noticed by the central government right away, and this is now returning to God's own country.
I must tell you how I got noticed. Actually, I was Secretary Tourism, and I was sleeping in my house one Sunday afternoon, and I got a call that I was a young officer, and he said, Principal Secretary to Prime Minister wants to talk to you. Sunday afternoon, sleeping in my house, Principal Secretary to Prime Minister wants to talk. So I got online, and the other side, they put me on to Brijesh Mishra. So they said, Mr. Brijesh Mishra said कि अमिताभ जी आप सेक्रेटरी टूरिज्म हैं. तो मैंने कहा हाँ साहब मैं सेक्रेटरी टूरिज्म हूँ सर. तो ये सर कि वो आप एक काम कीजिए कि वो वाजपेयी साहब प्रधानमंत्री जी आएंगे वहाँ केरला में अपनी हॉलिडे करेंगे और don't tell anyone about this. You will plan it out, you will host him, you will stay with him, you will manage the whole thing. No chief minister, no panchayat president, nothing. So I planned out his whole Kumaragam holiday. 1 week. He came and stayed for a week in Kumaragam. So morning, lunch, dinner, I used to arrange, evening ghazals, everything I did for about a week, and used to write Kerala musings and all, Kumaragam musings and all that. Then, I'd taken him out on the backwaters one afternoon, and when I came back, Mr. Brijesh Mishra told PM, Mr. Sakia was there, Mr. Brijesh Mishra was there. So Mr. Brijesh Mishra told Mr. Vajpayee कि इस लड़के ने बहुत काम किया है टूरिज्म में. ये सारा आपने देखा, हाउस बोट, आयुर्वेदा, आपने बैकवाटर्स भी देख लिए, साइनेजेस भी देख लिए. सो वी शुड ब्रिंग हिम टू गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया टूरिज्म मिनिस्ट्री में इनको लाना चाहिए. तो मिस्टर वाजपेयी टर्न टू मी, सेड अमिताभ जी आपने भारत सरकार के लिए अप्लाई किया है, हैव यू अप्लाइड फॉर गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया? सो आई सेड नो सर, आई हैव नॉट अप्लाइड. सो ही सेड नहीं बिल्कुल मत अप्लाई करिएगा, आप अप्लाई करिएगा तो ब्रजेश मिश्रा जी आपको टूरिज्म के बदले विमेन एंड चाइल्ड वेलफेयर में भेज देंगे. ही विल सेंड यू टू विमेन एंड चाइल्ड वेलफेयर. I applied 1 year, 2 months later. I was supposed to go to finance ministry. The civil services board selected me to go to finance ministry. And then one fine Friday or something, again I get a call from Mr. Brijesh Mishra. He says, Amitabh, have you applied for government of India? I said, yes. So he said, you know where you're going? So I said, sir, I'm told that the civil services board has selected me for finance. So he said, no, nothing doing, you're not going to finance. So he said, you remember that conversation 1 year back? We are sending you to tourism. So I said, sir, there's no vacancy there. So he said, that's none of your business. He kept the phone down. And, there was a joint secretary. They posted her to Labour Ministry, posted me as in tourism. And as soon as I landed there, within 10 days of that, the Twin Tower blast happened in New York. There was war in Afghanistan. There was attack on our parliament. Our tourism plummeted to 10%. We had few hotels, but there was no occupancy. So at the peak of that crisis, when Singapore, Malaysia, everyone, Thailand, everyone had ended their tourism campaign and closed it, we launched, at the peak of that crisis, we launched Incredible India campaign. So that's how Incredible India was, crisis turned into an opportunity.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, wonderfully done, wonderfully done. Now, from there on, we get to the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor.
Yeah.
This is where we first met.
Yeah.
I remember that I'd written an article which you really appreciated, and I happened to be in Delhi at the time, and I got a call from you and come and see me. So I came to your office and we had a conversation.
Yeah. So, I've been a great believer in two things. One is that, India cannot grow at high rates on a sustained basis over a long period of time. It's not possible for India to grow at high rates of 8 to 9% year after year for 3 decades or more. And that is what India needs to do. Unless it doesn't become a manufacturing nation, number one. Secondly, unless and until that manufacturing is not accompanied by good urbanization. And my belief is that actually urbanization will be India's biggest growth story if we do it right. Because what we are seeing is unplanned, unsustainable urbanization. And every minute there are 30 Indians moving from rural areas to urban areas. But if we get that urbanization story right, 500 million Indians getting into the process of urbanization in the next 5 decades means you can really transform the history and the whole growth trajectory of India in the coming years. So both manufacturing and urbanization really are the key. And manufacturing actually requires a completely different paradigm because, when America was growing, it expanded its infrastructure, but it made cities for cars. So you have about 1,100 cars per 1,000 people. Actually, America made cities for cars and not for people. Whereas India has this huge opportunity to make cities which are very sustainable, which are based on public transportation, which are made for cycling, walking, which are walk to work, and which have manufacturing and managers living right there, workers living right there. So it has a massive opportunity to do many unique things, which is what we've tried to do in Shendra Bitkin, which some of you should go and see in Maharashtra. Some of you should go to Dholera and see what we've done there. It's really transformational work of a different nature of urbanization with all infrastructure planned out, from water, electricity, roads, everything. It's a tough job to do infrastructure of that nature because the revenue streams come in a little later. But that's the key to India's growth story. That's the heart of India's growth story.
Totally. Couldn't agree with you more. All right. So we move forward. From there on, you come to DIP, the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. And this is where I think this close to Prime Minister Modi coming to office as well. And this is where you do this ease of doing business and a lot of the other initiatives. So now we are getting to the current policy scene.
Yeah. So, I got to know, when I was DMIC DC CO, I'd gone around meeting chief ministers and many chief ministers, but one chief minister who really took this seriously was Mr. Modi, because he said that आप करिए इसको, धुलेरा को बनाइए, मैं 700 square kilometer देता हूँ आपको. So that was huge. Everybody was talking about 10, 20, 25 square kilometers, which they never gave eventually. But Mr. Modi was talking about 700, 800 square kilometers. So his vision was really big. So I then subsequently met him a couple of times, and he really lived up to his commitment as far as land for Dholera was concerned. And then, when he came in as Prime Minister, the first presentation, he was taking presentations from secretaries, and I made a presentation to him, and I was also pretty new to that job. And then when I told him that India was 142nd on the ease of doing business, he said, "ये आप लोगों ने bureaucrat लोगों ने सब rules, इसमें तो कोई politics है नहीं, आप लोगों ने ये सब rules regulation बना रखे हैं." And then he said, "इसको ठीक करिए आप." So actually that particular job was looked after by the Finance Ministry, Economic Affairs then. He said, "नहीं आप करिए इसको." So then we started just going after the ministries. It was a tough job, but we dismantled a lot of rules, regulation, procedures, acts. It was a really tough one. It was about working with the ministries. So I still remember that we digitized a lot. But every time we tried to do that, you go to EPFO, ESIC, they will digitize, and they will also say कि भाई paper में भी आप दीजिए. So it was digitization plus paperwork. So we had to really change mindsets because governments were used to working in silos, to break that and to really, so we improved radically on the World Bank ease of doing business. But one of the great things that happened was that the Prime Minister then told us कि आप states में करवाइए इसको. So we started ranking states. And the first year we did this, Gujarat came number 1. But the second year we did it, Andhra beat Gujarat. Third year we did it, Telangana beat Gujarat and Maharashtra. But the great thing that happened was that Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh took this very seriously, and they came 4th and 5th. And my belief is really that if competition, which we did in Niti Aayog and many other things, education, health, water, many other things, if you start creating on real-time data, and data is really the key, that if you're able to put this data out in public domain and create a huge sense of competition, and if you start naming and shaming, you'll see transformation taking place. So my belief is really that this whole story of India, because we are a very large country, you need states to become the key driver of growth, and for that you need to really put competition, put a huge amount of effort to get real-time data, put it in public domain, and really let the public know whether the politicians and the civil servants are delivering or not, and start naming and shaming them. And I've seen real transformation taking place. I later did the aspirational districts, exactly the same model across 112 districts. Young collectors really took this on, and all of them, young collectors, really transformed their districts based on 49 different indicators: health, education, nutrition. Transformational work was done by them simply because of data, use of data for transformation.
Now, in DIP also, though, one of the big things you did was the Make in India and Startup India.
Yeah.
Those
So two things. One was that, like I said, that Make in India was critical because it meant several things. It meant that you had to do ease of doing business, but you also had to open up the foreign direct investment regime. That time, we used to get about 25, 30 billion. Right now, we're getting close to about 90 billion. You know, it's grown from about 20 destinations to about 88 odd destinations. The size has grown from 40 million to about 80 million now. Huge amount. So I took about 16 notes to the cabinet, one after another, and every single note that I took got approved, except one on which I got a massive firing from Mr. Jaitley then. I took a note, I took a note on totally opening up the defense sector. No, Mr. Jaitley, I got the finance minister to approve it, and then Mr. Jaitley called me up, and I got my minister to approve it, and Mr. Jaitley said कि you're moving, तुम बहुत जल्दी चीज़ें कर रहे हो, तो बहुत ये politically acceptable नहीं है जो तुम कर रहे हो. So then he said कि नहीं, एक काम करो, इसको कम करो, इसको 51% करो, केवल तुम सीधे 100% के बदले 51% करो. Then we got it back, we changed it. But I must say one thing, that the government really showed the courage to open up the FDI regime. The third thing we did was to improve the patent regime a lot, and I recruited about close to 1,000 examiners. The first time we got and today, our patent and trademark regime is so good, we are on par with USA and Japan in terms of time factor, because we really improved the patent regime as far as, in terms of the speed, in terms of the manpower, in terms of the caliber. So many things were a part of that whole exercise of improving the ecosystem for manufacturing. And then now that Gati Shakti has come in, now that there's a huge focus on manufacturing, I think all this will pay us rich dividends.
And this is also where I think, this around the time I just arrived, this was my first year, I was still at DIP. And a lot of the FDI liberalization was done during this period, including the e-marketplace, right? I think this is the time the Amazon and...
So we opened it up in every single sector, but one of the most remarkable things that we did as a part of that was that, there were just about, when we started, we launched the Startup India movement in 2016, January, and there were just about 150 odd startups. Today you have about 88,000 startups in India, and you have about 116 unicorns in India. So the startups have done really transformational work in India. They have found unique solutions to the challenges of India, which are just phenomenal. And actually, they're finding solution not for the 1.3 billion people of India, but they're finding solution for the next 4 to 5 billion people of the world who are going to move from poverty to middle class in the next decade. And unique solutions on education, learning outcome, health outcomes. There's path-breaking work. There's a young girl called Aditi who runs Imbibe. She's doing on learning outcomes in Rajasthan. She's tracking down performance of children across maths, physics, chemistry, and then giving extra dosage of education using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So path-breaking work across many sectors.
Fantastic. Okay. Now, you just have had a book come out It's the Incredible India 2.0.
Oh, that came out sometime back.
Oh, that is sometime.
That came.
Okay.
There's a new one.
It's a 2.0.
Yeah, that came out sometime back, but there's a new one which is going to come out soon.
Okay. Shall we talk a little bit about that book?
Well, that's about 75 years of history of manufacturing, and that's born out of my belief that what India has done is really transformational work in the last 7 to 8 years, and a little bit of that was dwelt in by Viral in the previous session. But let me tell you, what India has done is really path-breaking in terms of the digital transformation that has taken place, and which is totally open source, open API, open standard, interoperability, consent-based. We have a data empowerment protection architecture which protects the data of citizens. So what India has done is really path-breaking work in terms of not merely the jam trinity that everybody has identity, everybody has consent-based payment, and everybody does digital payments. I've not used my debit or credit card for 3.5 years. The only time I used it was when I came to San Francisco last year to hire an Uber car. I've not been to a ATM machine for over 4 years now. So what India has done is convert the mobile. My mobile is really my bank. I really operate out of my bank, which is my mobile, for everything. And that is why India last year did 48.6 billion transaction, real-time transaction, 48.6 billion transaction. We do 41% of the world's real-time digital transaction. Wow. The next is China with 16%, 16 billion, which is about close to about 12 to 13% of the world's transactions. So 41 to 12 to 13%, that is the difference. We do 7x of what USA, France, Germany, Canada do altogether. We do 3x of what China does. And that's, we established this digital public infrastructure, which is totally unparalleled in the world. We've created these public guardrails, like the railway tracks, on which private sector is innovating. We are the only country in the world where PhonePe competes with Google Pay and beats them. We are the only country in the world where Paytm competes with WhatsApp and beats them. It's unparalleled what India has done. And actually, in the years to come, you will see this huge amount of, the world will realize that India has built up this unique combination of privacy and innovation. Unlike what America has done, America has created a big tech model. Europe has created a model of GDPR, which is focused on privacy but killed innovation. India has created a model of both privacy, where data is owned by citizens, but pushed for innovation. Huge innovation. And what it has led to is, look at what India has done. We started with payments, with PhonePe, Google Pay, all this. But going beyond that, look at what MobiKwik, Lending Card, Pine Labs have done. They've used payments to do lendings to people below poverty line, to lend to MSME, etc. That was one layer. Totally cashless, paperless lending by young startups. Then the next disruption happened by companies, a whole range of new companies in terms of personal finance, in terms of wealth management, etc., which Zerodha, etc. did. And that was about getting into stock markets, totally paperless, cashless. Just get in and start transacting, all because of your digital identity. And the third was about insurance. When I was, I've seen this. It used to take me months to get an insurance policy. Digit and Acco, young startups, they give you an insurance policy in less than 2 minutes. So I've seen this transformation. I've worked in Kerala. My job was to transform the lives of traditional fishermen. That time I gave nets, which were then known as disco nets. We gave outboard motors. We gave them new fishing crafts, fiberglass crafts. But the challenge was that, fisherman life was that you catch a fish, it's a tough life. You catch a fish, you come back, whatever money you get, you start drinking. So we had to open bank accounts. It used to take me 7 to 8 months to open a bank account. Know your customer was such a nightmare. Today, you open an account in India in less than a minute. So I've seen this whole transformational story within my lifetime, within the last 1 decade, from 9 months to less than a minute. And that is why what the Bureau, your BIS, this International Settlement Bank, has said, that what India has achieved in the last 7 to 8 years through digital transformation would have taken India 50 years to achieve what it has done. And therefore, the transformation which India has done will really accelerate the pace of growth in the coming years.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'll ask you one last question and then we open it up to the audience. And this is now the tough one, with which, the one with which we have all been grappling, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. And this is the challenge of good jobs. And it ties into a number of things. And I'll repeat, this is a question I had asked at the earlier panel as well, that, at the end of the day, you got almost 45% of the population in agriculture. Of the remaining 55%, 10% is in these enterprises which are less than, which are 20% or more, but remaining 45% is in enterprises which are less than 20 people size, very small enterprises. So in a way, when you take the big picture snapshot of India, you see that India is really a country of these very tiny units. In agriculture, again, not only that there is 45% of the population of the workforce there, but half of the agricultural holdings are about less than half hectare, on average less than a quarter hectare. Likewise, you come to the industry and services. Most of these, a lot of self-employment, mom and pop kind of operations, small enterprises. Political economy, of course, now works in a different way because the votes are in the either agriculture, so farmers, and votes are in the small little enterprises, so micro and small. So the policy kind of really tries to do good things, quote unquote good things, for the farmers and for the micro and small. But what that also translates into is that farmers remain farmers on these tiny holdings, and micro and small enterprises also remain micro and small enterprises, paddling in the same place roughly. Some improvements, of course, have happened with overall growth happening, but that kind of is the picture I draw, and ultimately I think we need to get out of this picture. What can we do?
So one is that, well, to my mind, the few things. One is that in India, agriculture contribution to GDP is close to about 18 to 20%, but 42% of your manpower is employed in agriculture. I mean, the worldwide average is 4%, 42%. I mean, you can never be a wealthy country if you get 42% of your people living in agriculture. So, I mean, look at Indian states. Look at some states like Goa, etc., which are growing at 5x, the average of what India is growing at, 5x. There are Maharashtra and Gujarat, which are growing at 2.5x of what India is growing at. And then there are states which are at 20%, 30%. There are states which are just about, the average 20% of that. That means Bihar, UP, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, etc. All these states, unless and until you don't transform and move away from agriculture into manufacturing and urbanization. Right. That is the key. Now, when you go and talk to these chief ministers, they'll tell you, we want to do agriculture. I mean, agriculture is good. The more you do agriculture, the more you do anti-poverty schemes, the more poorer you will get. Yeah. That's my belief. I mean, it's important to understand this because one city in Uttar Pradesh, Gautam Budh Nagar, which comprises of Noida and Greater Noida, gives you 10x more GDP than the second city of Uttar Pradesh, which is Kanpur. 10x. People do not realize this, but the GDP of Mumbai and of Mexico City is more than the GDP of Uttar Pradesh. That's what urbanization does to you. You want to create good quality job, change the mindset of India and all these eastern states that you have to urbanize, you have to manufacture. That is the forward movement. But you talk to some of these chief ministers, they say, नहीं हमें तो agriculture कृषि करनी है. कृषि में और कृषि से क्या होगा भैया आपकी prosperity. It's important to understand this because you want to give good quality jobs. They will not come from that sector. You have to find alternatives. The second point I want to make is that it's very important if India is to grow as a manufacturing nation and you want to grow at high rates for a long time. It's not going to come from the traditional sectors of India. It's going to come from sunrise areas of growth. You have to get, we must understand this, that the world has changed. And the world has changed into completely new areas of growth. The electronic and the mobile manufacturing value today in the world is more than the sale of automobiles. So you have to become a champion in that. You have to get into electric mobility. You have to get into battery storage. These are the new areas of growth where the future of India wants to capture the world. You have to get into the sunrise areas of growth, and without that, and establish size and scale. And there's massive amount of disruption taking place in these sectors. And young companies are doing this. Young startups are doing this. It's the traditional Indian companies which must wake up and do this. You know, I've interacted with all of them, and that's why I'm saying that you want to penetrate the global economy, you want to get into global supply chains, these are the areas of growth. There's huge disruption taking place, and if you penetrate these sectors, you'll generate huge value for the country. That's the only way. And thirdly, bring in competitive efficiency in your businesses. Competitive efficiency means doing away with rules, regulation, procedures, acts, dismantle them, and fourthly, get into a very active degree of privatization, which is what the Prime Minister wants. Disinvestment has to be far more active. Asset monetization has to be far more active. Long-term productivity will come from these areas of growth. If once the private sector get it, after some time the banks will not have the value, and therefore you need to, because they're not digital. And that's the way to grow. So privatization, asset monetization, that's my belief. And that's my belief, that India needs to grow at not what you people are talking about. India needs to grow at 9 to 10% per annum, year after year, year after year. And many countries have done this. You know, Japan did this earlier. Korea did this. Japan did this. China has done this. Smaller countries have done this. Singapore did this. All of them did this. We are facing challenges of, global debt, of global trade crisis, of dollar strengthening, but we'll have to take those challenges head on. But we need to set our own house in order and accelerate the pace, and that is what the Prime Minister has been driving at.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, so I said this will be my last question, but there is one more I have to touch on. Obviously, this is your current preoccupation. Now you are India's G20 Sherpa. So India is going to be hosting the G20 Leaders Summit the coming year. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what kind of work is going on, what are the specific areas in which we would be making a pitch, and what the work program there is.
We're going to take over presidency from Indonesia.
Right.
On the 1st of December, Indonesia has faced huge challenges because of the existing geopolitics, the Russia, Ukraine, and many other things, post-COVID, many other challenges. By the time India takes over presidency, you'll have the dollar strengthening further, and you'll see recession in many parts of the world. So I think G20, its basic charter is about driving global economy, it's about financial growth, it's about social progress and so on. So I think one of the key challenges will be about, for leaders of the world, G20 leaders of the world, who account for about 85% of the global GDP and 78% of the global trade, is really to bring growth center stage and do it in a very sustainable manner. How do you drive growth with sustainability? Second is vast segments of population have come below the poverty line because of COVID. So close to about 125 million people have gone below poverty line. Health, education, nutrition, all have been impacted. So, I mean, leaders of the world, they'll have to discuss this and find ways to accelerate the progress of sustainable development goals. You are midway through the 2030 goals, so you need to accelerate the pace of that. Thirdly, I think there's a huge challenge about climate action and climate finance. So my belief is that it's a huge opportunity for India. It's not a challenge, it's an opportunity. If you want to make a quantum jump forward, you have to get into new technologies, you have to accelerate the pace of your growth with sustainable technologies, and therefore climate action will be a very critical area. The developed world, India has not contributed to carbonizing the world. The developed world has. India's contribution to the total carbon space has just been 1.8%. It is logically entitled to 18%. But irrespective of that, Indian government has committed to be the first country in the world to industrialize without carbonizing. And therefore, we need to accelerate the pace, and that's something which the world has to discuss. The leaders have to discuss that the developed world has not lived up to its commitment of providing finance, which it had committed to in 2009 for climate finance. And fourthly, I think my belief is that there's a huge narrative which India needs to send out about digital transformation as very distinct from other countries. And fifthly, I think the multilateral institutions of the world, World Bank and IMF, many of these institutions were formed in the post-World War II Bretton Woods period. They have outlived their utility, and I think, to my mind, World Bank should merely be funding, not doing direct lending, and should be doing financing for climate change and for SDG. They should be doing credit enhancement. It should be doing blended finance. It should be doing first loss guarantees, which it will enable it to do 10x more lending than what it does right now. So there's a huge need to restructure the multilateral financial institutions, and I hope US takes the lead on that regard.
Fantastic. So that's a very extensive agenda. So, okay, we'll open it up now. Ashley.
Amitabh, always inspirational, but I have a question for you. Can you succeed in your ambitions with just manufacturing and urbanization if it is not tied to a strategy of accessing first world markets? Because when you look at the growth successes in the post-war period, all of them exploited access to wealthier markets. How does this strategy work if you do not have access to wealthier markets and then reciprocal, a cycle that exploits foreign trade in a very productive way?
No, I didn't have, actually, I didn't have time to really comment on everything, but when I'm talking about India becoming a manufacturing nation and really manufacturing to size and scale, when I'm talking about competitive efficiency, I'm really saying that it's not possible for India to grow without being an exporting nation. You have to penetrate global markets, and you have to definitely penetrate United States of America. I mean, all countries in the world have become wealthy. China is what it is because of penetrating United States of America. You have to become an integral part of global supply chains. I mean, and there's a decoupling of US and China taking place right now. So many people were in the previous session commenting about this, and let me say that while there's a huge opportunity for India, fresh investments may go anywhere right now, but a lot of investments also through Apple and etc. is happening in India. But my view is that it's a long-term game, and I think India should just make itself the easiest place in the world to do business in. Once you've got that right, I think once you've got the size and scale of the market, I mean, you've done everything right. I mean, you look at what India has achieved in the last couple of years. I mean, we must understand this. You built, 30 million houses. That's like building a complete Australia. You provided electricity for all your people. You've done 2.5 billion vaccination. That's 7x the population of Europe and USA. I mean, you provided 81 million water connections, which is like doing water to every single individual of Brazil. I mean, so you've done all this right. Now you just open up completely, and we need not fear this fear of people coming in and penetrating market. You become the lowest cost producer in many new areas of technology. Your entrepreneurship is top class. They have demonstrated in renewable energy what India is capable of achieving, 110 gigawatt in a very short while. And next is you can become the production and technological hub of green hydrogen for the world. It's just that America is now turning highly protectionist. Look at its Inflation Reduction Act. It's totally protectionist. You're saying that I'm going to give $3 for green hydrogen to those who manufacture in the United States of America? What is this policy? It's totally against everything US has stood for. Irrespective of the climate condition, irrespective of the talent, I'm going to give $3, not for supplies, but for production in USA. And the IRA has led to every single green hydrogen project from Australia to Korea to India getting stopped. And people like you must tell the US administration. Yeah.
One sentence by way of, I agree with that. I'm deeply troubled by the protectionist sentiments in my own country. But the problem is we run the risk of a race to the bottom, where if you go and talk to American companies, the complaints about the lack of opportunities in India, tariff lines, blah, 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 only provides grist for the kind of Buy America programs that you see in the US. So for me, the danger is not who's doing what, but we end up pursuing policies where all of us are going to rush to a bottom, which leaves us all worse off. And I don't know how to break that cycle right now.
No, actually, but what is this just energy transition that Europe and America is talking about? What is this decarbonization which America is talking about here? If you do this, you're not allowing other countries to decarbonize. I mean, why should India believe in this humbug theory of net zero? In 2049, they'll fix up a target of 2090 or something. They've not achieved a single target these developed countries have fixed for themselves from COP1 to COP26.
So, Tassie?
Tassie Schaefer, I'm a retired U.S. diplomat and also a former trade official. And no, I'm not going to start defending the rash of protectionism that there's been. At the end of the last session, there was a lot of discussion about having good jobs for the economic transformation that India needs. And a certain amount of frustration with the sclerotic educational system in India, consciousness of the difficulty for businesses to do their own training. Do you have an answer to that conundrum?
So, the good quality jobs, to my mind, have to be created through manufacturing, through urbanization. There's a huge, huge potential for India. I think the third thing which I said was very, very important, that India, we must understand, is bigger than 24 countries of Europe, and therefore state leadership is very, very critical. And it's also very important that several states must take leadership and drive this growth strategy. It can't be just the central government alone. States have to be very critical driver of growth. And once that comes in, that energy of competing with each other comes in, you'll see growth taking place. But there is a huge challenge of states realizing that manufacturing and urbanization are going to create good quality jobs. Otherwise, they'll remain as labor exporting states to other parts of the country. Yeah, please.
No, let the mic that way. I think it's probably getting... Oh,
Why don't you give it to Mr. Yan? Please.
Shall I go
Yeah,
ahead?
okay.
Please.
Yeah, you'll take later. So go ahead.
Oh.
Son.
Okay. One puzzle, all the digitization and all the transactions, the demand for cash is at an all-time high. We have much, much more cash demand than even before demonetization. I mean, I have not been able to work out what is driving this enormous demand for cash, despite what you claim is this kind of world record in digitization. As far as the other problems are concerned, I mean, what you have not, this collapse of female participation in the labor force. And it's worst of all, you talk about urbanization. The participation rate of females in the urban is just 15 to 16%. It's the lowest virtually in the world. It's getting lower than Saudi Arabia. There is no sign of any improvement of the female participation in cities. I myself don't know the answer. But if you can't solve this, then all the supposed things that are going to flow out will not come out. And finally, you have Pratham shows that no improvement in education. After all the efforts, guys in class 5 cannot read a class 2 text. No improvement in 10 years. I mean, these are the most fundamentals. So cash, female participation, education.
So I think Mr. Iyer has raised very, very important points, and I am a long-term believer that learning outcomes and health outcomes, and one point which he didn't talk about was about nutrition, which is very critical. I think learning outcomes are very, very critical. Not only Pratham's study, which is done by a very outstanding organization, but also the NAS studies demonstrate that our learning outcomes are very poor. And therefore, you need a radical transformation in your education system, much of which I think is started now. I think in the last 2 to 3 years, a lot has started happening in some of the states. I've seen this happening in Rajasthan, I've seen this happening in Jharkhand, I've seen this happening in Madhya Pradesh. A lot of work has been done around learning outcomes and improving learning outcomes. It's not an easy job, it's a very, very tough job to improve learning outcomes, because what happens is if you've not followed in class 2, then you keep going class 3, class 4, class 5, but your knowledge base remains the same, and 5% of the students learn and others just remain behind. Huge amount of work had been done, but I think it's been heavily impacted by the COVID right now. And I think the government has laid a lot of stress on learning outcomes at the central government level and some of the states. But I think it's important that states take this up as a huge mission to transform education. And the second point about cash, I'm not much worried about cash transactions as long as the pace of your digital transactions keep accelerating. That's growing by leaps and bounds, and I think over a period of time you will see, I'm seeing street vendors, and the good thing is that government is driving this, that you will not be entitled to Swanidhi loan unless and until you are not doing digital transaction. So across many sectors, the government has driven this. But on he has a very valid point about female labor participation ratio, which has been a puzzle for me also. And I've also been a great believer that if 50% of your population is not able to make a huge dent, is not able to accelerate. So I've been discussing this with a number of people, and actually I'll after this session, I'll give you this study which the CA has done, and CA's view, the Chief Economic Advisor's view on this analysis, his analysis was first let me just say that some of the good things that's happened is, one is the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. When it started in 2015, only about 15% of the accounts were owned by with women. The latest data which has just come in has that number of women accounts have gone up to 56%. And it was feared that the deposits will not be there, but the deposits have gone up substantially, and 67% of those accounts are in rural areas. So that's a good thing, which shows the formalization of the sector, and also that women are playing a key role. The other is about the CA study, which I'll transfer to you. According to him, his analysis shows that the data which is being fed in from India is not correct. It's not the same. I've not had a deep analysis of that. I just got it from him about 2-3 days back, but I've not had a good analysis. But I really, it's really something which has worried me as well, that I'm a great believer that this is a very major challenge for India, and India must take this challenge head on. I think, to my mind, the first big challenge for India, amongst other things, is about improving nutritional standards, because we've got into this vicious circle of motherhood and then anemic child, and so you need to improve nutritional standards, you need to improve learning outcomes, and then you need to improve hugely the women participation ratio. That's a huge challenge, and I entirely agree with Mr. Iyer on this.
Okay, yeah, we had youth there.
Mr. Kant, I have two very quick questions. First is, I completely buy your sentiment about the importance of urbanization and ease of doing business, but shouldn't we tread on this path with a sense of caution? Because we've seen in Uttar Pradesh, we've seen in Jharkhand that because of the rush of the need for investments, they've been diluting labor laws, reducing bargaining power of labor unions. So there is sort of decrease in human capital because of because of the urge to ease doing a business. My second question is about looking the international exposure for India. We've constantly seen that the government has sort of brought in international guests and dignitaries to Delhi and Gujarat. So there is India beyond Delhi and Gujarat. Even the G-20 presidency continues to be in Delhi. Why is it that the government's mindset about giving India an international exposure limited to Delhi and Gujarat? Why there is, I'm sure you agree that there is India beyond these two states.
So first of all, The G20 events are being held in every state. The Prime Minister has clearly directed that G20 events must be held in every state and every union territory of India. Many events are being held in Bihar, many events are being held in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh. They're being held in Lakshadweep and Andaman, everywhere, Northeast in particular, many events. Only the Leaders Summit, because of very many security reasons, etc., is being held in Delhi, but there are over 200 events being held in many other parts of India. So there you are incorrect totally. The number two is about the labor laws, and the labor laws during the COVID period, which were announced by the UP government, were not finally approved by the central government. So that remained in limbo. But having said that, it's also very important to understand this. India has very rigid labor laws. I mean, and that's what has led to the creation of the informal sector in India. I mean, the gig economy has grown and expanded, and informal sector has grown rapidly because there's an Exim Bank study which says that India has the second worst labor laws in the world after Pakistan. So you decide whether you want to be in the company of Pakistan. So you need to liberalize. I mean, we are all for rights of the labor, but don't take it to such an extreme that many of these laws that were made in the socialist era are totally outdated. I mean, that if you don't paint your toilet in the industrial thing, then you get 6 months of jail. Those are totally outdated laws which need to be modified.
Okay, so we take two more questions. Oh, wow, quite a few hands. Okay, go back there. There are more.
Hi, I'm a student at SEPA. I have a question on the data aspect of, and you very rightfully said that data is very important. You mentioned how data is freely available and like the importance of it, but I feel my understanding is that is India doing enough? There have been times when data, every time I'm researching the accuracy of the data, the availability of data, the distribution of data, these are issues which we very regularly, for any aspect and any industry, we don't find data available. Even if the data is available, we are never sure about the accuracy. So how do you think what you said and what the problem is actually, how are they in sync? Also, about the data privacy bill in this monsoon session of the parliament, they withdrew that bill. So you were mentioning how privacy and the innovation have been in sync, but that's not coming out in reality.
So there are two aspects of your question, and one is I personally think the Data Protection Act, which was withdrawn, was a terrible bill. So having withdrawn it and setting it right is much better than doing a crazy act, which had prescribed all kind of controls of the government and all kind of things. That's one part of it, and let the new bill come so that we can debate and discuss this. The other about is lack of data from government, and which needs to be put out in a proper manner so that researchers like you all, entrepreneurs, etc., can access it. And it's very important, and that's one work which Niti Aayog is doing through a project called NDAB, which is collecting data from all ministries, cleaning it up, and putting it out in public domain so that entrepreneurs and young researchers, etc., can access it. But that's a very important point you made, that India must put out its data in public domain in a transparent manner, and that's very important. That's an important part.
Hello, sir. My question is, we have talked about tourism and job opportunities and other type of growth and development in India. My question is very specific to our poorest state, which is Bihar. So I want to ask, because people has to go out of Bihar to seek growth and development all the time. Like if he want to, have a good time for tourism, they'll go out of Bihar for health, for education, everything. So what we can do to improve the tourism, job opportunities, and healthcare system to improve this state of the state Bihar? Because we have talked about other states, like Rajasthan is doing well, and tourism is good in other parts of India, but not in Bihar. So what we can do about it?
So if 50% plus of your population is totally dependent on agriculture, you will have poor quality jobs. People will look for jobs in other places. I mean, there's no way you can create good quality jobs from agriculture. So unless you do very, very high value addition in agriculture, which is also not happening, so you need to create other avenues. I mean, Bihar has got tremendous tourism assets. It's got Bodh Gaya, it's got Rajgir, it's got Nalanda. It can attract all the Buddhist tourists from all over the world. I've traveled on those roads from Bodh Gaya to Rajgir to Nalanda. They're terrible roads. So, I mean, the state has to fix it. Central government or I sitting here can't do it. It's the state has to fix it. There's a elected state government which needs to fix it. And the state needs to drive many other areas of growth which I talked about.
Okay.
Hi.
Last.
I'm a student at Columbia Engineering. You talked about how digital transformation has really empowered the economy over the last decade. So I want to know, what are you most excited about? For what a few projects are you most excited about that will drive growth, that were as impactful as UPI for the next decade for India?
See, my belief is that, India's done the digital part of it, and I think India will accelerate the pace of it, but India needs now to go green. And, valuation of companies and of countries, and your ability to attract capital, large pools of capital, and there are vast pools of funds available. There's no shortage of funds available in the world. There are vast pools of institutional funds available in the world, which are available to you, but they'll go only to companies and countries which are going green. And therefore, India must take the lead and actually deliver on a rate, and that is what the aim is, that we've done renewable energy, 110 gigawatts. Many of these young companies have acted like coy boys. You look at a company like Greenco, unbelievable what they've done through, hydro pump storage. Unbelievable what ACMA has done in terms of green hydrogen. Unbelievable what they've done. Even a company like Renew, what they've done is they're unparalleled. Now you can't keep doing renewables, because the more renewables you do, and India is climatically blessed. It doesn't have competition from China in this area. The competition is from Middle East. But you can't keep doing more and more renewable, because you will end up with a duck curve. That is, your grid will not be able to handle it like it happened in California. So you need, the only way out is you do battery storage. Battery storage is still very expensive. So you need to use renewable to crack water, produce green hydrogen. India can emerge as the lowest cost producer of green hydrogen, it can become the biggest technological hub of the world in green hydrogen. It can become the supplier of green hydrogen to decarbonize. Because it's very important to understand that electricity is only 20% of our energy. The balance 80% doesn't use electricity. Refineries, cement, steel, fertilizer, they all use fossil fuel. You have to decarbonize all that. And India has a huge opportunity, because 11% of the grey hydrogen in the world is used in our refineries. We should make all that go green. India has the size and scale to be the biggest producer and exporter of green hydrogen, and that is really the biggest opportunity for India, to my mind. It can be the supplier of green hydrogen to all over the world, Europe, America, as long as US doesn't have these crazy policies.
Too many hands up.
Yeah, madam,
Can we
please.
Just, I could not agree more with you about, how we should be improving the quality of our data. But what has happened in the last few years is that whenever there's a controversial data out there, the government just withdraws it. We saw that with NSSO data, we saw it with the socioeconomic survey of caste. Instead of improving the quality of NSSO collection, we just withdraw those things. I mean, in other countries, at least I use a lot of data in the US, the data is available and it's in the, the scholars are generally discussing, they're trying to see how to interpret it in a better way, improve it in a better way. Part of what it has led to is that we have not had the census, and a lot of people also have these questions whether people would be telling right answers at the census because of this great deal of insecurity about, talking about your religion or other questions. So, I mean, I think there should be a concerted effort to firstly strengthen the data organizations, maybe put it in the private sector or something, and then improve the quality. Otherwise, how do you, as you said, do research?
Yeah. No, I entirely agree with you, and that is, I totally agree with you that data needs to be put out in public domain, and that's why you have a professional statistician from Reserve Bank of India heading the Statistics Department of India. We should put out all the data. We should do all these surveys and put them out. There will be ups and downs, but we should be transparent about it. There's no issue about it.
Okay, last one, Itasham. And then we have the closing words from Mr. Deepak Raj.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that energizing lecture. I'm Atasham. I'm from the Revenue Services on deputation with the UNDP. So my question is on the multilateralism.
The Revenue Department?
Yeah, from the IRS. And this is something that even the Finance Secretary in the morning talked about, that multilateralism has not worked when it comes to economic governance for India in the long run. And you also mentioned sort of, the need for reform in the Bretton Woods institutions. And it's great that it's coming at a time in the sense that India has the G-20 presidency, so it has an option to put some things on the table which can sort of fructify in the long run. But G20 presidency is a very short-term period also. And at this point in global political economy situation, you see the crisis in Ukraine, and we have seen in the morning the challenges in the economy that is going to come up maybe. There is a fear of a looming recession coming up. So what's that strategy in the coming 1 year so that we move towards this reformation? And connected to that is the question that the mandate of G20 itself and the legitimacy to sort of enunciate laws for the global world. And where do you see the role of United Nations in that? And how do you connect, get them on board for that larger reformation?
So, G20 is important because in the past it has taken some very important decisions. It's set up the FSB, the Financial Stability Board. It has driven growth in several past presidencies, etc. I think the thing about is that every crisis is an opportunity. There is a crisis. There's a crisis of geopolitics. There's a crisis of global debt. There's a crisis of post-COVID era. There's a crisis of global supply chains getting disrupted. There can't be a better opportunity for India. Every crisis is an opportunity. Be as ambitious as you can be as action-oriented that you can be, and that is what we'll try to be. We'll be very, very ambitious, very action-oriented, and I think we'll see the day through.
Thank you. Well, that's the last word, and you can see, all of you, how why Mr. Amitabh Kant is the Prime Minister's go-to man. So, thank you very much. It's been fantastic. Deepak will give the closing remarks.
I just would like to say, wow, what a day it has been. And if I'm going to walk out of here with so much more confidence about the future of India, I don't know how many of you shared that. I mean, I would say, all that we heard today about technology, about commerce, about fusion, about alternative energies, so many things to give us the confidence that the future of India is indeed bright. And one of the most important things that is here is, just the passion, the eloquence, the focus of all the speakers today. I thought they were just wonderful and really painted a fantastic picture of what is to come for India. So thank you very much to all the speakers who spoke today, Mr. Kant, Mr. Subramaniam, and I'm sure there are others here too.
Without whom nobody would be here.
Without whom, yeah, exactly right. So it's my privilege here to thank our organizers here, obviously, Arvind. What an incredible conference you put together. Congratulations and thank you. Ashley, same thing for you. Incredible conference. Thanks for doing all that you've done. I'd like to thank Michael. Is he here? He's gone. Okay, all right.
Don't forget Vivek. I think
well deserved. Vivek, it's a great job.
Vivek really has done volunteer work, completely, and he has devoted days and days to organizing. And even actually, if you look at the fantastic posters outside, these are designed by Vivek.
Fantastic.
He's an
Thank
absolutely
you very much.
incredible.
And Sophia, if she's still here, thank you very much for that. One request I have here is that, I think one thing that comes across pretty clearly is that the relationships between India and the US are only going to improve. They're only going to get better. So I think 5 years from now, it'll be much better than what it is right now. And I've asked Ashley to send us 3 points on what the Indian diaspora in the US can do to help in that journey. So Ashley, we look forward to those 3 points. And I tell you, we will work hard, with the resources that we have. And our community, I tell you, is so much better connected to DC. It is so much better connected to the political system. All these Diwali parties we had is an example of that in the last week or 10 days. But I think there's much more work to do, and we can be helpful to the extent we can be. We're happy to work with you. So thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for coming, and we will see you in first half of next year for the next summit. Thank you. Take care.